where the victim is not necessarily put on trial, and a little bit more of the suspect is being put on trial. And I think that's better in the sense of, obviously, just for the victim, but the education. We're getting it out there, we're getting the information out there through our school systems, through our school resource officers. There's more resources for the children to talk to disclose this information to. Groups like CASA, as an example, that can assist the families and the victims going through this process. I mean, these are fantastic resources, and I'm glad they're in place, and I know they can be improved upon, funded better, and will, in a sense, be able to increase where we're going to find need for these children, victims, to resort to for the reporting and for the identification and the process. And it's a constant improvement. I know that the interviewing process has changed dramatically from when I was in it, and it's just simply gotten better. You know, that these are crimes, when you look at them, very few of them go to trial. And I think that's due in part for one of the main reasons is a very, very solid investigation. And I think that is in part not only due to, again, groups like CASA, but in law enforcement that are doing the investigation. As far as the registry, I think a centralized registry is honestly a really good idea because you're able to share that information from department to department a lot easier, where someone can just look it up and they don't have to make phone calls, they don't have to wait if it's perhaps a weekend or if it gets real busy. They're having to find somebody else to go up front to open the book, to look up the registry and find out exactly what the stipulations are. I think a central registry makes a lot of sense. And yeah, there's obviously always room for improvement, what we can do through legislature for better legislation to make these folks register. And as Chuck pointed out, they are a very transient group. They move around quite often, and what usually happens is they get found out in their community, and their community puts a lot of pressure on them, and so they move on. Or maybe it's simply because they offended in that community and they move on. That needs to, with the central registry as an example, is a way that help can be help prevented, because there's going to be more access from more law enforcement entities to find out who these people are and where they're residing.
Thanks. Generally, we suggest these guys try to keep it to 2 minutes on their responses. They're doing pretty good, but we'll let them get warmed up here a little bit. So anyhow, we'll get a rhythm here in just a minute. The justice of the peace is no longer a partisan vote. Do you think that the office of sheriff should be made nonpartisan in future elections?
Yes. You know, I think the office of sheriff is something, I understand why it's currently set up the way it is as far as having to be partisan, but it really and truly should be exactly the way that the justices and the district court judges. It should be a nonpartisan position. It should be set up election-wise. It's very similarly to the way the JPs and the district court judges go through their election process.
I agree that the office of sheriff should be nonpartisan. The judges in this state are nonpartisan, both, actually all levels of judges are nonpartisan, because partisan politics should not play a role in decisions that are handed down from our judiciary. I don't think that partisan politics should affect the office of sheriff either. I understand perfectly well why legislatures should remain partisan, why people should know general party affiliation, but I think much as with the judges, it would make perfect sense to just be able to listen to the candidates individually without having partisan politics affect our law enforcement.
Given the current state of morale with the deputies in detention and the overall administrative offices in the department, what would you do if elected to improve the situation?
I feel fairly strongly about this point in this question. I'm very proud to have served for 15 years as undersheriff with Sheriff Jim DuPont, and I'm very proud of the organization that we ran. I think we ran a very publicly responsive, transparent, fair sheriff's department. That being said, I think a lot of the current issues could be resolved by having a strong, competent leader that the people trusted. The employees in any organization need to know what the rules are, very clearly. They need to see that the rules are followed by everyone. They need to see that the rules are evenly enforced, and it should never matter who you are in the enforcement of any sort of law or rule. If you're the guy that just started, or you're the number 2 guy, the rules ought to apply equally and fairly to everyone. And I think employees of not just the sheriff's office, but all of you here in the room that have run businesses, have been employees, or have had employees know that your employees are happy when they may not always agree with you, but they at least respect you, respect your organization, if things are even, consistent, and above all fair. That's how I would deal with the situation currently in the sheriff's office.
Thank you for that question. My slogan, restoring leadership, integrity, and accountability, fair and consistent accountability. Obviously, we do have a morale problem in our office, and I believe that problem starts from the top and goes down. You have to set the tone as the leader of your organization. With your administration as well. They're setting the tone for everyone else to follow. You need to lead by example. And if you can lead with positive energy, not negative energy, you can lead by not fear, but by reasonable accountability for everyone, across the board, regardless of where you are in rank and or time and grade. You know, if you go into the office with a positive attitude, that's going to radiate from you, and you have to do it day in and day out, regardless of what necessarily may be going on in your personal life. You know, and again, I think it starts from the top, it works its way down. You have to set the tone, and you have to be consistent in how you do that. And I think if you go through the office with perhaps changing of administration and changing of some of the things that are in place in our office right now that have installed a little bit of integrity issues, I think that tone can be changed very quickly and very dramatically.
What do you feel is the biggest crime-related issue that the Flathead Valley will be facing in the next 4 years?
I think probably theft is probably going to be one of the biggest ones. You know, with our economic times as they are, we're all going through a difficult time, and some folks are having a more difficult time than others. With the construction sites that are out there, the construction site thefts and burglaries have been going up. As our economy is going to take some time to stabilize, in the process of that, you're going to have a lot of folks that have a lot of bills to be paid. I know that we're surfing a lot of civil papers from creditors, asking people to pay the money that are owed them. A lot of these folks aren't able to come up with that money, and they're going to have to come up with it somehow at some point. And unfortunately, some of them will result and end up as a last resort in taking something that doesn't belong to them to sell, to take to a pawn shop, or perhaps trade for other services. And I think the thefts are going to probably be the highest thing that we're going to see coming into the office throughout the next 4 years until our economy starts to stabilize again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think everyone in this room is probably in agreement that we are facing difficult economic times. Certainly as a country, as a region, and I think even here locally, our unemployment rate's high, people are not, the housing market is bad. So with bad economic times, usually there are two issues that increase. The first is property crimes. Property crimes go up. And also, alcohol and drug-related offenses tend to go up as well, especially with those who have lost their jobs, who have lost a means to provide for their family. It's all interrelated and interactive. So as the alcohol abuse and drug abuse goes up, hence the property crimes go up. And it's not just people stealing to feed their family, it's people stealing to support their addictions. And I think as a community, those are two things that we're going to have to look at and deal with effectively. Certainly as a law enforcement community, I think we're going to have to.
Given the overall budget restraints and climate, what priority do you place on training your officers if elected sheriff?